So last year I attempted to run and draw the world's largest GPS drawing of a cock and balls. So welcome to the Rokman Podcast, and in this episode I'm going to share exactly how I took on the hardest challenge of my life and whether I actually managed to achieve and set a world record for the largest GPS drawing of a dick. So let's dive into it. Now my first big problem was I was completely out of shape. I needed to lose about 1.5 stones to get back to any sort of normality. I also knew I wanted to do it for charity, to give me that extra level of motivation, and that's why I chose the charity Movember. And tying in with the men's health charity Movember, I thought, what do men find hilarious? Massive cock and balls. I wanted to do the world's biggest GPS drawing of a cock and balls, which led me on to applying to Guinness for my world record attempt. And my application came back denied. They weren't going to recognize it. They just weren't interested. God knows why. Who wouldn't love that? But then I got thinking and I was like, I don't need Guinness. Guinness are just a company. They don't own world records. So I was like, screw them. So I decided to do it off my own back. So I did my due diligence and I scoured high and low on the internet trying to find out what was the biggest GPS drawing of a cock and balls on foot in a single continuous effort. My web search history was very interesting that week and I couldn't find anything over just a few miles. So I was confident that the record didn't exist. And as long as I got the publicity and the exposure, I would then cement my place as the person who with the world's largest GPS dick. And the next hurdle I had to overcome was I had to find my cock-shaped route. Now first I had to know how big it was going to be. Now 5 years previous I'd done a 50-mile ultramarathon challenge. That was the biggest distance I'd ever done and that almost broke me. Now being in the worst shape of fitness I've ever been in my life, I knew I probably wanted around that distance or maybe slightly less. So I went out searching on the maps to try and find this cock-shaped route. It's very easy to find cock-shaped routes when you're looking on the micro, when you're looking at little streets. But when you're zooming out, when you're looking for a 50-mile route, it gets harder. And the most difficult part was finding two parallel lines that run long enough parallel to each other to create that penis shaft. And thankfully, I managed to find one, but it was in the Brecon Beacon Mountains, full of elevation. And I followed these paths up and I was like, brilliant, that's my shaft. I was like, can I tack a helmet on the top here? I was like, yeah, got a little bell end. Can I tack 2 balls on at the bottom? I was like, yeah, there's 2 balls. I was like, fantastic. I found my route, we're back on. But then I saw the difference. It was 72 miles, which was 50% increase on my previous challenge. And don't forget, I'm a lot less fit now. Also, there was 10,000 feet of elevation gain. That's almost the same distance as base camp to the peak of Everest. But I thought, that's it. That's gotta be it. I've got to do it. If it's not going to push me out my side of my comfort zone, if it's not going to be hard, then it's not going to be a challenge. So I thought, we're just going to have to do this. So I set my announcement, I put my social posts out, I put my stake in the ground, and it was on. So then I started my training. And the first week of training, I was dog shit. I couldn't believe how unfit I was. And I was dying after every run, struggling on every run. But I kept at it. I kept training, and after 4 weeks, I still felt like death. I was honestly starting to think, what the hell have I signed myself up for? But after 6 weeks, that was the turning point. That's when things started to click. I started to feel stronger. I started to feel fitter. That's the lesson here is things take time. You've got to allow yourself that time to get fit again and trust the process. My next problem though was when we got to the halfway stage, the latter stage of this training plan, the endurance runs on the weekend started to increase by an hour or 2 every single week, getting up to the point where I was doing 10-hour training runs. That means getting up in the morning, putting your shoes on, hitting the tarmac, and then coming back at bedtime, having a shower and jumping into bed. Finding that time was difficult, but luckily I had a very understanding wife that would allow me to go out on these weekends. And by the end of the 4-month training plan, I started to feel fitter, stronger, happier, and I managed to shift the weight that I'd aimed to do. 10 kilograms in all. It was whether I could actually do the record now and raise the money. And if you want to see the exact training plan I did to do this challenge, then there's a link in the description below. But as the challenge approached, this is where things started to go wrong. Most of the people that said that they were going to come out and support me started to cancel last minute. But I relied on this support. I needed this support to get me through. And also all the promotion I was doing for the challenge just wasn't hitting. It wasn't sticking. My posts were getting barely any views. And by the time I started the challenge, I only had about £200 raised for Movember, way off my £1,000 target. However, I still had my core of supporters. I had my friend Robin, Dave, Harry, my brother Fred, and my mum and dad who said they would support me on the run to get it done. And I thought that was enough. That bare bones crew is going to be enough and I'm going to be able to do it and get it done. So At 5 p.m. from Abergavenny, I started the challenge. The sun was just going down. It started in pitch black. And for the first 22 miles of that challenge to the first checkpoint, it was all uphill. I had not anticipated that at all. And it wrecked me. I was an broken, beaten man by the time I got to my first checkpoint. And when I left that checkpoint, I honestly did not know whether I'm going to be able to continue. I honestly didn't know if I'd be able to get it done. I had 9 hours of running more to go only until the next checkpoint. I still had 50 miles to actually get to the end and achieve the target. But quitting wasn't an option. Although I really bloody wanted to in that moment, it just wasn't an option. I'd made too much noise about the challenge. So I just put one foot in front of the other and just kept marching on. Now, the Brecon Beacons may sound like a lovely place to go and do this challenge, but for the first 12 hours, it was in pitch darkness. This is November the 1st after all. This is like the middle of autumn. There's barely any sunlight. The landscape was barren, desolate, depressing, kept getting lost, kept going off route. And obviously with a challenge like this, staying on route is so integral to what you're trying to achieve. At one point, we even lost my brother as he headed back to the checkpoint. He rang me saying, I can't see where I am. At that point, I honestly thought that the challenge might actually end there because we can't leave someone out on the mountains not knowing where they are, even if it was my brother. And as we got to the point with 5 miles just to go, that is when my knee locked out and I couldn't bend my bloody knee. It brought me down to a walking pace, but we were so close to the end, that was not going to stop me. I was going to drag my ass all the way to the end at that point. And eventually, once we returned back to Abergavenny, I'd crossed that finish line and set the record for the world's largest GPS drawing of a cock and balls. And almost instantly, when I crossed that finish line, the press started to get in touch. They'd picked up on the challenge. It was featured in the BBC, the Metro, the Guardian, the Daily Mail, the New York Post. It went worldwide. I honestly did not expect it to go that far. My social posts actually started to click and stick and go viral. I was getting over 1 million views on some of the posts. And with this extra exposure, the donations started to come in as well. I blew my £1,000 target out of the water and we ended up raising over £10,000. Honestly, could not believe it. And even though it was one of the hardest challenges I'd ever taken on in my life, it was the most meaningful and fulfilling, especially as I'd got myself back into shape. Absolutely slaughtered my £1,000 target, and I hopefully prove to people that when you're suffering the strain of life, when you're lacking a direction, that challenges are the best way to get yourself out of that hole. Give yourself a foundation for living, something to aim for, but not only to improve your health and your fitness, but also sort of your mental well-being as well. Now, obviously, I couldn't have done this challenge without a proper running plan. To go from zero fitness to taking on world records 72-mile ultra runs, you need a proper plan. And if you want to see the exact running plan that I used to get myself back into shape, you can watch the video here, or you can just download it directly with the link in the description below. Thank you for watching the Rokman Podcast, and I will catch you up again soon.